Good morning. Welcome to the Hackers Challenge Shakedown. I am Josh Galvez, also known as Zevlag, or the Hackers Challenge Game Master. By raise of hands, because I love to see it, I assume that's why you're here. How many of you have played Hackers Challenge this week? Woo! Hey, honestly, when it comes down to it, a ton of you have played Hackers Challenge this week, and it's awesome. There was a huge collection of challenges on the board. 4 categories of Hackers Jeopardy, which was considerably less than previous years, and I've heard a lot of thank you for that. So hopefully it wasn't too many and not too few this year. A full 20 puzzles, and none of them were single solve, one guess questions. So none of this who versus whom. Everything else. So there we had 15 other active categories, spanning another 71 challenges. So there was a large breadth of challenges across multiple areas. Hopefully it drove you around to multiple SAINTCON villages and got you participating amongst your peers. 307 players registered to play. Of our conference registration of somewhere near 11,000 or 1,100, well, a bit over a third. 265 of you solved at least one challenge, so that's awesome. And then 165 solved at least 5 challenges, which is my bar for saying, hey, are they really participating? So that's a great participation for players. 4,000 correct answers across all those puzzles. That's a lot of puzzles. I was like, whoa, I didn't realize there'd be that many right answers. Caught me off guard. 15,000 incorrect guesses. So those are the ones that actually made it to the scoreboard. I'm sure you had a lot more guesses that never made it there. And this is the one that disappointed me. 2,700 brute force solve attempts on one puzzle. One of you sat there and pounded against my server for a while, just brute forcing a Rot 13 question. He says he didn't know how to spell 13. Please don't brute force the game server. If you had been higher on the scoreboard, I would have had to disqualify you for that behavior. At this point, it wasn't severely detrimental, but it can severely harm the game. But thank you for playing. I will welcome your question. Come up to the mic and ask if you don't mind.
Yes, I'm wondering what framework you wrote the challenge system.
The game server, yeah. So the game server is hosted on a platform called CTFD. It's available on GitHub. I have extremely augmented it with multiple plugins and extensions for it to provide the game style that we have classically here at SAINTCON and that we love, so to make a Hackers Challenge. If you are interested in hosting CTFs, I strongly suggest CTFD, and it's a community that deserves our feedback and support because it's great. Time stats. I don't have as detailed as I like, but it surprised me that the slowest time for answers was actually 8 a.m. There were more answers submitted during the 6 a.m., 5 a.m., 4 a.m. hours than there were in the 8 a.m. hour. And then the busiest was actually 4 p.m. The most attempts happened during that hour. Okay, that's my stats for the Hackers Challenge Shakedown. So now it's your turn. What puzzles do you want to hear about? Which puzzles do you have questions about? And we'll turn the time over to you to ask those, and we'll walk through them. Please come up to the mic.
Overvoltage.
Overvoltage. So Overvoltage was a fun puzzle built on a new password vault. It was contributed by our password cracking community, and it implements a fairly secure algorithm to maintain a password vault. The primary steps, I don't have a solve step on my workstation, but the intended method is to simply write a wrapper around the format to then brute force it. The password for that was in the Rocky list. It's Blue Lightning. And so it's something that either you write an expect script around or you find some actually published scripts for a similar password vault, and you pull out the bottom half of the scripts that were explicit to that style, and then you augment them to brute force that. And that is literally what it was, a password cracking attempt. If you have more questions specifically about it, our good friend Q from Password Cracking submitted that. Thank you.
So I wanted to know about the one from the crypto challenge that looked like base 64 but wasn't plain base 64.
Oh, okay, that's a fun one. That one was a reminder of a challenge that taught a really good lesson to some of our previous winners in the past years. Now, let me pull that up and I'll show you that one. So we were looking for the crypto, just a small challenge. So I will remind you that as I build challenges, I often build a lot of metadata into the challenge. The name of a challenge or the comment is a strong hint to what you're looking at. So just a small challenge. You look at this string and it's pretty obvious you have a base 64 string. So I'm going to go to one of my favorite tools that all of you should hopefully have used at least a dozen times during this challenge, was GCHQ's CyberChef. So I'll paste this base 64 into the input field of CyberChef. And we know it's base 64, so that one will be easy. We'll go from base 64, and we end up with this blob looks like this. So when I'm looking at blobs like this, I find it important. I like to look at a hex dump. So I'll go to hex. So I'll take this, I'll drag 2 hex over here, and I look at this. And as you get familiar with formats, you might notice something that looks obvious to you. It might not, but it does to me. So this 1F8B0800, that is a very familiar header to me. I'm not going to get the answer yet, but let's try another attempt here. So if I take this, and I don't go to hex, but I can say, CyberChef, let's do some magic on this. I don't know if this one magic will find or not, but I'm playing along with you. And right here on some magic, it found that it was a G-unzip. And it gave you your flag right here. So you could have done magic and said, CyberChef detect it, or recognize the header that it was a gzip header. And so just a small challenge. If something's small or something's big, what are you going to do to make it small? You're going to compress it. And so that was a compression header, and it was a gzipped file that was base 64 to make it easy to communicate. And that's the solve for that challenge. Do you have another? So I guess my hint there would be learn to use CyberChef. It has extremely powerful tools to do binary rotation, file detection, basic classic crypto, and even modern crypto, all the way up to AES and Blowfish, etc. It doesn't do ROT 8000.
So how do you get the MAC address from the memory dump?
MAC address from the memory dump. I'm going to invite my fellow game master that helped to design many of the challenges this year, Bash Ninja, up to talk about the memory dump. Does this work? It does.
Okay, awesome. So the MAC address, that one was really fun. It was not supposed to be as hard as it was, but it ended up being pretty difficult for many of you. The trick with the MAC address is that you can't easily pull it out with volatility. So we had all of these challenges, the memory dump challenges. The majority of you were using volatility 2 and volatility 3 to solve this one. I've seen a couple of people solve it a couple of different ways. One of the more interesting ways was they just ran a strings of the entire memory dump and then regexed for something in MAC format and attempted every single MAC address they found. That's useful for a CTF, not so useful for a real forensics investigation. The correct way to do this, or the way that I personally intended it to be solved, was you have the ability to use a plugin called Hive List, which will show you the registries that are found in memory. There's a flag for it called --dump. You can dump the registry to a file. And then I used a tool called reg ripper to help me go through this dumped registry and find values that are in there. And the MAC address is contained within the registry of the Windows machine. Yeah.
I'd love to comment, and I really thank Bash Ninja for his contributions to the memory forensic category this year. That is a new one for SAINTCON, and I would love to hear by applause if you enjoyed that. Thanks, Bash. That's a new one for SAINTCON. We've never done memory dump images. We've done disk images and virtual machines, but we had a lot of fun with memory images. And next year, I think you may need to know how to dump live RAM from a system if you're going to play. So maybe look into Lime or some of the other tool plugins to pull the RAM yourself.
Yeah, continuing on that, everything I know about Windows memory dump processing I learned yesterday. But another question I have is, oops, I did it again.
Okay, that was my fun one, and I really enjoyed building the Oops, I Did It Again challenge. That is right here in the pwnable category. And we look at it, and I've got a fancy new website. It's running the latest software. I'm sure, because I built that software from source. Nobody's going to breach my site. Nobody's going to read my database. Okay, so once again, reminder, there's a lot of metadata here. So you're going to look at what web server is running. And if you first notice that it is the Apache web server, and it's running the version, 2450. There was a modern CVE, a recent vulnerability that happened in Apache on 2449. It was a really simple local file inclusion path traversal. So let me pull up some details on that. One of my favorite places to find information about modern vulnerabilities is somewhere like ExploitDB, especially for big vulnerabilities. And you'll notice going to ExploitDB, they're right at the top of the list. It's down the list now. Search here for Apache. And right here at the top list for Apache, for October 6th, October 13th, we have a 2449 path traversal and code execution and a 2450 path traversal and code execution. And so I intentionally didn't choose the older one where it was completely raw because that was easy. So I went to 2450 where they had attempted to patch it. And instead of using a simple percentage sign 2e, which they weren't escaping properly, so you could path traversal, you had to do a double escape. So percent sign percent 2e 26, or it was a double escape, and I'll show it here in the code. And that would allow you to do the file inclusion. And a lot of you saw that, and you found that, and you could actually find the source file of the index.php. And you could say, oh, it was trying to include a file in a different path. User local Apache 2 db/flag.inc. Let me see if I can just walk through that and show you. So we pull up this site, and it's a fun looking site. I built a little bit of a site here so you'd have something entertaining. And I just want to see the headers here. So once again, we pull up the site and we see we get a response, it's 2450. And by using the path traversal vulnerability, and I'll just look right here in the ExploitDB, and you can even just take these examples here, and you can see they've encoded this, and I'll just paste this in here a few times. And I'll go up like that, and I'll go etc password. Let's put in there a few more. Oh, and so here's the, sorry, I'm doing this live demo. It needs to, with this exploit, for this modern version, it needs to actually, the exploit, the problem in the vulnerability was that it had to go through an aliased directory. And a default alias directory for Apache is the CGI bin. and I think it may actually need the post command. But so the solve here is this exploit actually just will work in raw. So if you were to grab the script and put in the path and run it for that destination, for that folder, against the user local Apache 2 db flag.inc, it would drop that flag out. My wife was looking at it yesterday and was entertained. Let me see if I can find it in my history. I don't have it in my history right now. But that's the solve. It was vulnerable to the 2450 CGI bin exploit, and just dumped the flag.inc. But once again, ExploitDB is a great source to find modern exploits that get included in Metasploit. Or you could have used the Metasploit framework as well to find, once you found that it was vulnerable to the Apache bug. What are the questions? What are the puzzles we want to walk through?
Okay, so I really loved jumping into Troy's head. And I took the leap of faith, jumped out over the trees, found stuff on the ground, and then I tried looking at the code finally. I don't know what I was doing though, so I want to know that one.
So that was a fun contribution. Tristan, our network guru here at SAINTCON, built that and had a lot of fun building that for us. And it provided a lot of entertainment. If you had actually persisted, I think the name of that challenge was persistence, right? On that one. And done it again. Gone through the hoop and jumped through the head again, the code becomes visible. I'm sure there's a more concise solve path for it. Is Tristan in here? Okay, he's not. Oh, Tristan, come tell us about it.
So that challenge is basically you have to climb up a giant statue of Troy, Jupiter. All my challenges actually have Jupiter hidden in them. And yeah, you're welcome. So you were able to jump. There was, once you got inside his head, it said, take a leap of faith. And the solution is you actually have to go to the highest point and then jump off and just kind of go off to the edge, and you'll fall off the world. And did you get under the world and see the message under there?
I just saw numbers and percent.
Yes.
Oh, you got there. Okay,
Yes.
You did get there.
That's the flag?
So
No.
let's look at the clue here. That was a lot of fun. So here's the clue for that one. And once again, remember, my metadata for my puzzles always guide you towards what you're looking at. So let's read this out. Let's read this together. We can accomplish our great things by working together. Some people are gas giants, guiding dozens of moons in the orbit. Even though hardships try to divide us, we will remain strong. What was in that string that you found? Modulo. A percent sign, meaning modulo. And you see it now. A divide and a remainder. So you perform the mathematical arithmetic function on that string, and that's your flag. Thank you, Tristan, so much for contributing that challenge.
How in the world do you boot those reverse engineering ones, the .bin files? I could not figure that out.
Let me show you that. That's a lot of fun. So let me pull up my VMware. One of the awesome tools I mentioned in my talk yesterday was VMware. I use it for everything. Learned to use virtual environments. And so I'm going to boot up a Ubuntu environment on my Mac. And inside my Ubuntu environment, I'm going to do even more virtualization. I'm going to run QEMU. There we go. Sorry, while I wait for my slow workstation, it's time to upgrade. As I wink at my wife, sitting on the front row. Okay. History, pipe, grep, QEMU. And so I have my install of my x86 system there, but I don't have my history. And I just want to show you this right, so let me go find my build flag.
Josh is really hard of sight, and you'll always see him 2 inches away from his screen, zooming and everything else. I mean, he's got it down to a science. He's very super good at it. But you have to think of, with, I'll call it a disability, but maybe not really that, how much harder he has to work to make all this work. Like, this is how he has to do it all.
Okay, so this was my boot me challenge. Here's my make file and where I had it tested. So essentially a command like this. So install QEMU and allow it to install the subsystem for x86 emulation. And you can just pass it a path, such as the boot.bin for the boot drive. And that's how you would easily boot it, to run it. Let me copy and paste this into my system and I'll show it to you. This is in my boot me reverse folder. And if I just go make boot, which will run my boot file, you'll see it boot. And in this case, for that one, there's your flag. So it boots just straight to the flag for that first one. The next one was a little bit more challenging. It'd pop up with a password prompt. But the key is going to be the same for both of them, the way to approach it. And you'll see that if I do a make debug, it'll boot and it'll connect my GDB debugger for me automatically. And this, you don't have the source code to be able to run it this way, but that's how the approach would have been. And so there's my make file and the commands that I would have used to either boot it or to boot into a debug environment and attach GDB to set breakpoints through it. And so that was the step for the first boot me and the next one where you had to boot it and then get the password. What was that? I can't. The droids. Okay, so droids is not related to the same the two challenges. It was a uber difficult reverse engineering puzzle. That one was contributed with much gratitude to our Professor Plum, who a couple years ago built the Windows version of that, a complete anti-debugger. There were at least 16 steps of anti-debugging that you had to go through to extract that flag and then decrypt it with OpenSSL. So I don't have all those steps to walk through that right here on stage right now, but I'm sure Professor Plum would gladly talk you through those. Yes, please come up and ask a question.
Hello. I thought I knew what the RFC winged animals one was, but everything I tried didn't work. So.
Okay, so tell me about it. He's asking about RFC for winged animals. Tell me what you learned about it.
I thought it was a gnat because it has wings on it.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't thought about that approach.
And it smells like, internet networking stuff, but it didn't work.
Okay, so the IETF, I don't know if you're familiar with this group that develops RFCs for the Foundation of Internet Engineers, are very entertaining people, like a lot of us. And sometimes they get very bored and just need some fun. So they have published some very interesting RFCs about the operation of the world. So he's asking about an RFC. Let's pull it up, so I'll show you on the game board. And unlock me. And you were asking about, yeah, it didn't unlock for me. But let me go to the admin panel. Oh, it will show the score there. I'm not going back that way. Okay, so this Jeopardy one, I was asking about, let me pull up, I can pull up that sheet. You guys can see that, because you've seen them already. Hacker Jeopardy. I think that's the right one. Yes. This RFC allows for the internet to function by winged animals. So this is RFC number 1149 about carrier pigeons. It is TCP over carrier pigeon. Or avian, yes. Avian carriers. Carrier pigeon is the modification to it later. It provided queuing. And yes, it was the Bergen Network Group, and it was actually implemented. It was entertaining.
The thing about that RFC is it was released on April 1st.
Yes, it was released on April 1st. Several of these that I called out were April 1st releases. Like I said, the IETF has some entertaining engineers. The Git board. Yes. Any other questions? Which puzzles do you want to see walkthroughs for? Or solutions?
RFC, he reminded me. The RFC where the IP address could end in 0.
Yes.
I looked at a number of them and couldn't find the right one, so I'm kind of curious which one you were looking for.
That one was tricky because it wasn't actually asking for an RFC.
Oh, really?
Yes, let's look at the wording for this. Yes, and so this is Networking 101, and the question was, the standard that allowed for your workstation to IP address to end in 0. Oh yes, the title of the hint. I'll log in so I can see that. Let's show that. Once again, metadata was important. I won't show the scores. Let's see if I can type my password though on stage. It's like not long enough. Okay, so a drink. So the hint on this is a drink. The standard allowed for your workstation IP address to end in 0. So the name of this standard is classless internet interdomain routing, which was commonly called CIDR, C-I-D-R. Thus, a drink.
Okay, now I get it. How about, now here's one I saw, but I'm wondering if it's the one where you, I'll just do a little, it's the one where, I know how I saw the PNG flag, where the flag was in the picture.
Filtered is
Filtered.
Which one are you asking about? I'm sorry. The one with it in the game, in the binary?
Yeah. Top. Go up above reverse.
So I have a lot of puzzles that you could be asking about. I'm trying to make sure I get to the right one.
It's the one where you have the pirate theme.
Bash games, level game. This is the one thing I welcome about Bash Ninja. He built us a fun string of Docker SSH challenges we called the Bash games.
Yes.
So you're talking about the one where you're SSHing into a machine, right?
Yeah, you're SSH'd into the machine.
Okay. So this
I
one.
got it, but I'm just wondering if what I did was the best way.
There are a lot of ways. Literally, I'm just giving you a machine to log into, and then we blocked all outbound traffic. So you can't send stuff out, so you have to figure out how to get it in. There's a couple different ways, but the way that I intended it to be solved was to use a tool called SCP, which is like, it's very similar to FTP. It's just over an SSH tunnel, right? There are other ways that I've seen solved it. I saw one person cat the file to base64.
Which is the way I would have done it.
Take the string, bring it to their desktop, and then decode that, and then write it to a file.
I did similar to that.
There's so many different ways, but
Hex dumped it with
XXD.
Yeah, Hex dumped it with
XXD.
XXD.
And then saved it, took the command lines out, and then piped that back through it again to regenerate the file.
Yeah. There's just a lot of different ways, and I'm hoping that people be creative with it. Just find a way to get around the outbound block. You can't just transfer it out. You have to figure out how to get it to you. And so the very simplest way is to do SCP space the host you're connecting to and the file path that you want, in a space, and then where you want to write to on your desktop or on your local machine. And that'll just pull the file straight down. But again, there's lots of cool and creative ways that you can go about solving that one.
Capital P and turn on port forwarding?
Yep.
Yes. Thank you. I want to ask, is Klebe in the room? Are you willing to come walk up here and talk about overvoltage? You were our first solve on that, and I want to hear your solve method. And if you're okay doing it at the mic, I'd love to hear about it.
For overvolt, right?
Yeah, for overvolt.
Yeah, so that overvolt was probably one of the first really hard questions I looked at like Tuesday night, and just spent like hours looking at the spec, trying to figure it out, and texted a couple of my friends. I'm like, hey, like, what is going on? How are we, like, I'm looking at this, I can't figure it out, and looked at the spec, and I was confused, and I thought that maybe I could pull out a hash, the script hash. If you look at the spec, there's, you know, it talks about that, and I was like, maybe I can pull that out and crack it with hashcat.
Which was the intended method. That's one way you could do it. I want to hear what you keep going.
I'm not sure you could, but that's okay. And had problems with that because the script hash is wrapped in another encryption, right? And the file key is like 16 bytes, and I didn't want to have to brute force that. And it was a whole thing. And then I realized, you know, why don't I just use, because at this point I had been writing some Go. I realized that, so in the spec it talks about like, he uses base 64 but without padding. And I was like, I don't know how to do that myself. I don't know how to do that on the command line. Like, I'm just going to use the same function he uses in Go. And I didn't know Go. And I learned it for this, which it was a blast. Thank you. So I'm looking at it. I write this thing in Go to like reverse the base 64 just to look at it, get it back into like the normal format, whatever. And then I'm like, you know what? Why don't I just use the age source code and get a hook in there so we can brute force the passwords. And I write some code, and it doesn't work. I use Age's like official exported API. I run into some issues. I message a friend. He gets on Discord with me. We look at it. We dig through the spec. We dig through the code. We spent 4 hours digging and looking at like the stanza specification and the recipients and the headers, and hooked into that code instead. And then brute forced it with RockU. And I didn't get it with RockU, so we tried it with the crack station list. And that worked.
It's in the RockU list.
I don't know what I did wrong, but you know, it's fine. But we got it, and it took me days. I couldn't sleep at night. I was just thinking about the specification and how I could unwrap things and how we could what can we do to reverse the outside encryption so I can get the inside hash. That was a big red herring for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big blast, and shout out to my friend Kyle Hovey for helping me with the Go side of it and that stuff. He couldn't be here today, but I wish he could. So
well, thank you so much for playing.
Thanks.
Good job. Please come see me after. I want to talk to you. Yeah. What other puzzles do you want to hear about?
I think it's called Pwnedit, filtered it. That one I wanted to.
Yes.
What did you expect us to do with that? The server's blocking it.
Okay, let's look at the one you were see. You were looking for Pwnedit. Is that the one you wanted? Okay, we'll talk about the whole series. I'm not going to show you all of them, but I'll talk you through all of them because I know them.
I got it with PHP, but I don't know if there's another way.
Okay, so this was a fun series. This is a series of upload challenges. This is a server that, let me just pull it up because I'll show you at least one screen here, and I want everybody to see it. Not the Pokédaw. The image drop site. This is the Hackers Challenge image drop site. You can drop your images here and come back and find them in the next hour if you're lucky, because I delete everything randomly. That was really to save disk space, but and every user that started a session got a new user directory, so you weren't stomping on top of each other, hopefully. And so the challenge here is you could upload a file to the server and it would show up. So I'll go ahead and upload an image.
Yeah, the first one was easier.
Yep. So I'll go ahead and upload an image. And so here you have an uploaded image. So the goal here is, can you upload images that you weren't supposed to? Can you upload images that will get ran as PHP code? Because the server's running PHP. And you want to be able to execute your code on the server to find the flag that's hidden in the source. And so for this first one, it was really simple. The idea is you just rename your file and upload a .php file straight up. Not much filtering going on. It only would block it client side in JavaScript or in HTML. So that was easy. We'll move on to the next one. I'm looking for my category, web, right there. So bypass it. So this one we got a little bit harder. And we had file type filters on the website. And so it would check and verify the extension on the file. And on the server side, was this one the extension? This one's file type, that's what it was, yes. So this one would look for the MIME type. When you upload a file, you, in your post form, send it data and say, hey, this is MIME type files image/PNG, image/JPEG. And the server would check for that file type. And so you could say, I'm sending you a JPEG, but I'm going to name it gettheflag.php. And it would accept it. Because it was you told it was JPEG data, but you gave it a .php file, so you could execute it. What was that? Only legal if you set the evil bit, exactly. You have to follow those RFCs. Okay, web category, bypass it, filtered it. So once again, here, now we're better known better, but we were too sneaky for us. We added the relevant file validation logic on the server side. So now it's checking for if the MIME types are correct, and it's now going to check file extensions. And it checks file extensions in a whitelist. And if you're programming as a lazy developer, and you mail the whitelist extensions, and you think about how you're going to check it, you say, I'm going to run some regex on it. And I'm going to say, if the file has .png in it, it's a valid file. If it has .jpeg in it, it's a valid file. What's the mistake there? The mistake is that it could be anywhere in the file name. It wasn't just checking to see if .jpeg was at the end of the file. And so you could name it getMyFlag.jpeg.php, and it would pass the file validation logic. And you might say that's contrived, but it's not. I've ran into this in production code. So hopefully some of these challenges help you recognize problems that you might have in your environments. Okay, so for the last one, Pwnedit. This is a cool one. And we went a little bit beyond the file validation problems in a unique way. And I'm going to show you the code, because that's what makes this one fun. Web. Where's my web ones? Sorry, give me a second. Open my code. Okay, so I have a blacklisted files. And so in this application, you cannot upload any file that has any of these extensions. I won't, and this is good validation logic. If it ends with this extension, it will not make it to the server. So I have a blacklist. And if you look at this blacklist, it's pretty complete. My server will only execute things with these extensions. The server's running Apache, and Apache is connected to the PHP CGI executable. And so here's where you need to know a little bit about how PHP and Apache operate and how they integrate together. Does anybody know how you tell Apache to run PHP code? So you tell it, the interpreter, you in your HTTP config file, tell it, hey, if the extension is .php or .php5, or it has this MIME type, send it to PHP. Now, how do you configure PHP? Well, there you can do it in an HTTP config file, or every directory in Apache can also have a .htaccess file. This .htaccess file lets you configure PHP or configure Apache however you want to do for that directory only. And so I didn't blacklist, which is why blacklists can be a problem. the .htaccess file. And so you could upload a .htaccess file and modify the Apache configuration to run whatever file you wanted as PHP code. So you could say, if the file extension is .png, run it as PHP code. And so you could actually upload an image that was PHP source and tells Apache to upload it once you've modified a .htaccess. And that's the solution for that puzzle. Next year, there will be an SQL puzzle line like that that behaves similarly. I didn't get it finished this year. Do you like those progressive puzzles where they build the same website with progressive challenges? Okay.
The Now You See Me puzzle.
Now You See Me.
There's probably an easier way than I did, so I'd appreciate seeing how you do it. I went kind of in circles on that one.
Okay, this one was another JavaScript game that was built by Tristan. Thank you, Tristan. And the idea was that it flashes a string, your flag, for like 0.12 milliseconds, or a single frame. And there are several approaches here, and there's not a wrong way or a right way. You could have done a screen capture and recorded your video on your screen and stepped through those screens frame by frame. Or to dig into the JavaScript source and find the timer function and extend that timer so it would play longer. Those are the two methods I had looked at myself and have seen done. If you solved it a different way, I want to hear about it because I'm curious and entertained. I've got somebody coming up.
I just put some breakpoints in the command line editor, and when it reached the point where it's checking and it fails that check, I could step through.
Nice.
At that point, and then it showed up.
Good job.
I opened up the JavaScript files that were just loaded in the browser, read through the code, figured out one of the objects that was storing the value, and was able to just use the console in the DevTools, my browser, and just figured out and said, just print out this object that was hanging out in memory, and then I was able to expand the object and find a hidden function that had the variable just stored right there, just
Sweet.
Right there in the console.
So for that one, I was digging through the JavaScript, and I found the part where it hides it for a random amount of time, and I said hide it for 0 seconds every time.
Yep.
And so then it just showed up permanently.
Okay, we've got time for about another 10 minutes, I think. And so I've got two more questions probably.
I don't know the complexity of this one, but it drove me crazy because I thought I got the right answer. Could you do the RFC pink hexadecimal?
RFC ping hexadecimal, okay. Okay, so when you ping 0x641999055. Oh, pink, not ping? Ah, okay. Okay, a beautiful vivid pink, and the word to remove a file in leet. Okay, so this one is 0x delete, is the hexadecimal flag. The E's are E's, and the one, and the, yes, you have the 1 and the 7, and the E's are E's. And so what is 0x delete? I did see people trying to answer it with an O instead of a 0. So there were several people that were putting O's, OX instead of 0x. And there were several people that tried 3's instead of E's. If you want to check afterwards, I can look and we see what was going on with your answer. But I put 3's instead of E's. 3's instead of E's. And it's a beautiful color pink. It's almost the color of our Hackers Challenge pink this year.
So I'd like to hear anybody. So we solved the game, the one where you start if you are in the room that you can't reach. We solved it by just making that our start position. I'd love to know how anybody else solved it.
Okay, so he's asking if you've solved the Go SDL game. How did you approach getting into the hidden room? You deleted the walls. Awesome. He started in the room. When I play tested this, I patched the binary with a no clipping patch, and so I made it so that when you hit the walls, you could go right through them. Okay, so on that game, I don't know how many of you played that and tried to reverse engineer those files. You could open them in various tools, Ghidra, Binary Ninja, but I had the most success with reading Go in IDA Free with their cloud decompiler. It created some very readable main.main and other sub-functions to be able to interpret what Go was trying to do. So next time you approach Go, I would suggest looking at the IDA Free and their cloud compiler. He says everything else wasn't very pretty.
Yeah, I was using Ghidra, and yeah, it was kind of a pain, but I think what I ended up doing was just patching the binary to remove the check for if you were like in the room, and so it just did it automatically as soon as the game started.
Nice.
So it just like printed it out or whatever.
Well, thank you. I hope you enjoyed Hackers Challenge. That's the Shakedown for this year. I will leave the games up for a few days. I'm not coming on time, but I will post in Hackers Challenge. We try to save some money for SAINTCON, and closed cloud resources can get pricey. But thank you for playing. I hope you enjoy it. Stick around for a few minutes for closing ceremonies, and we will go through the top scores and award some prizes.